Okay, so I'm Jan Whittington and this is Marty Curry, and we have a short video for you about examples of thesis that have been completed by the Masters in Urban Planning program. So Marty, I just wanted to get your impressions. We selected 3 completed theses from our MUP students to provide examples of completed works from students in that program that might be useful for the MIPM program. Our thinking was that these 3 examples illustrate 3 different approaches to research, and these 3 products are organized in a way similar to what we're hoping to see in the capstones for MIPM students. So I wanted to know if you could, if you'd like to comment on those works.
Sure, and I would really encourage all of you students to look at each of these theses. Obviously, you don't have to read them word for word, but I think really looking through how they're organized and what their emphasis is. The first one by Katrina Jensen is, and these are all about water-related systems, so there's some theme in there that you can see, and that helps, I think, really demonstrate some of the different approaches that they've taken. But Jensen's thesis really evaluates land cover change and effectiveness and certain conservation land use tools within the Lake Washington Cedars managed watershed riparian buffers. And so she does more of a story problem and case study of this, really evaluating the effectiveness of regulatory and voluntary conservation land use tools. What she does is provide a very clear study objective. So that allows her to bring in background and context around riparian areas and what kinds of tools have been used in those before. And so she creates a clear objective and then goes through a series of steps, providing the background, clearly identifying the methods that are used for determining land cover change, analyzing those, looking across jurisdictions, and then discussing the findings, the causes of land cover change, and how those can be better managed in the future, all back to the goals of salmon recovery in Puget Sound. So hers, I think, is a very good example and is very clearly written. The second one is by Patrick Green, who you are somewhat familiar with because he's working with us on this course. And it really is looking at ecosystem service values in benefit cost analysis and flood mitigation projects. And he does more of, his is an example of a systems analysis, so he really looks at the role of ecosystem services in the benefit cost analysis of flood mitigation. And he, again, has very clearly stated introduction and research questions, and I think particularly looking at a lot of the work that you're doing on capstone projects, that having very clear research questions is important. And I think some of you I know are still kind of struggling about what is that research question. So hopefully these examples show you how other students have done this. Again, the literature review is very thorough, covering essential aspects of the analysis that he will be undertaking. And then he goes through the benefit cost analysis of floodplain restoration, looking at both quantitative and qualitative analysis, and then goes into a discussion of the issues that are identified through that analysis and their role in intergenerational equity. So he takes a fairly broad look at this, but then gets into a lot of depth through the systems analysis, and does offer conclusions recognizing ways to use expanded economic analysis and honest cost estimates to address how to protect the interests of future populations. And so he's addressing an issue that often hasn't been dealt with. A lot of times we look retrospectively at benefit cost analysis, but not looking to the future. The third example is Margaret Olson's recent thesis on fish and floods and its implementation of the 2008 biological opinion on national flood insurance programs in Washington State. She uses a case study model for this. And she does, I think, has a very good introduction to the sections of the thesis where she identifies very clear research questions, a description of what the literature review is going to cover, the purpose of both the literature review and the research methodology. So I would highly recommend that you look at this overview that she provides as a possible outline for including in your own capstone. Her literature review is very well organized. She does it by agency and source, and not only summarizes, but uses this to develop the theme work for the thesis analysis. And then she goes into discussion of the tools that have been used, analysis, and then methodology, because she not only does the literature review, but she conducts interviews, and so she really goes into depth. So if any of you are using interviews, hers is a good example of how she describes that process and the results from it. And then from there goes into the results and analysis of what implications this has for implementation design, and comes up with a series of potential tools and then recommendations on how they might actually address some of the issues and problems that they had in the implementation of that 2008 biological opinion. So I think all three of these, they offer examples of different approaches, and within each of them there are some very strong elements, and I would highly recommend looking through those to get ideas for yourself, because sometimes when you see one that's really clearly written, you can almost take that as a framework or an outline for your own work, kind of fitting in your own topic to it. So I would really, again, recommend that you take a look at these and pull as much as you can from them to help guide your work on your capstone.
Good. Thanks, Marty.
Yeah.
And the only point I would like to add is that master's students in the urban planning program, obviously they're interested in topics that are generally applicable to urban planning, and you'll be looking at topics that are more applicable to infrastructure systems or describing infrastructure systems. Clearly, all three of these theses have applicability to water systems. I mean, you might find yourself a little overwhelmed as you read these works, because master students in urban planning have 3 quarters to complete their thesis, and you are doing a capstone project in 2 quarters. So think about, as you read through these works and get an idea, you try to right-size your capstone in your mind by thinking about, what would these works look like if they were cut down by 1/3. So you
right.
can consider
and I think
that.
And a point related to that is that even these are pretty focused. And I think that, I know, is a challenge when you are trying to get your arms around a topic, is how do you narrow that focus? And all 3 of these have, I think, done a very good job and are good examples of narrowing a focus so that you can really get into depth in a topic, which really is a wise thing to do in a capstone or a thesis, because if you stay too broad, you end up being all over the map and sometimes not getting into the depth that you want to, or achieving your purpose in really making a difference in the literature.
Well, you definitely have to focus. These are good examples for that. Focus geographically and focused in time. Great, thank you.
Thank you.